Cornerstone Fund, now in its 25th year, offers faith-based, socially responsible investments to individuals, churches, and nonprofit organizations of the United Church of Christ. With these investments, the Cornerstone Fund provides low-cost financing options for local churches and affiliated ministries across the country.
The UCC has been a great partner with Interfaith Power and Light, with our Faith Climate Action Week, which just completed last week. It's the one time a year when all congregations across the country lift up care for creation in worship and other events to create a mass movement of people of faith speaking out for creation. And UCC has also partnered with IPL, Interfaith Power and Light, on the Faith to Ford campaign, asking Ford Motors to support the Clean Car Standards to clean up our air. And I want to point out one more connection between the UCC and Interfaith Power and Light. UCC has this really great process for becoming a creation justice church, which includes greening your church. They suggest using resources from other organizations to gain inspiration and guidance on taking specific actions, and Interfaith Power and Light is one of those organizations. So I'm happy to be on this call today and share the resources that IPL has to offer to help green your congregation. And I just wanted to point out at the bottom of this slide, Brooks Burnt is the Minister for Environmental Justice with the UCC Church, in case you don't know. And there is his email right there, which you can also find on the website. So how cool is your congregation? We're not talking about being fashionable or trendy or hip, though what we are talking about is the hottest trend in our nation today. Transitioning to clean energy is the greatest economic opportunity of the 21st century. So I just wanted to add a little bit more about myself. I'm the founder of Cool Congregations, which is the Earth Stewardship program that was adopted by Iowa Interfaith Power and Light about 13 years ago. And then that was quickly followed by the National Interfaith Power and Light adopting the program, and it's used by congregations and people of faith all across the country. Interfaith Power and Light is a national organization that has about 40 state affiliates, and Iowa is one of them. And I'm working for the National Interfaith Power and Light now. And so why is it important to green your congregation? Climate change is real. It's caused by the burning of fossil fuels, so we need to move to renewable sources of energy like solar and wind. In the 2015 UCC resolution on climate change calls for the establishment of a national task force devoted to the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And this is the photo of the UCC Council for Climate Justice. The resolution specifically suggests that all members, quote, make lifestyle changes to reduce the use of fossil fuels in our lives, our homes, our businesses, and our churches. So UCC, you're doing great work. What does it mean to green your congregation? Well, it means to reduce the energy use of your congregational facilities and operations and reduce the carbon emissions that are associated with the energy use. Ideally, by going all electric and sourcing your electrons from carbon-free energy sources such as geothermal, wind, solar, existing hydro, etc. There are many steps along the way. I'll be talking about small steps that are low cost, but also inspiring you to think a little bigger. For example, this congregation is carbon-free. We'll have more on them later. To green your congregation, you first need to create a receptive and informed attitude amongst your congregants and your leadership so that they will be ready to agree to make the necessary investments. And I just want to give you a few tips to build support in your congregation. So first off, you need to build a strong green team. These are the people who can make things happen. Include someone from your buildings and grounds, because they know the practical on-the-ground information that you'll need. And be sure to include someone from your governing board so they can keep the board informed of your actions and help garner the support that you need. And you'll also want someone who's good at education and someone who's good at marketing to your congregation. One of the tasks of the Green Team is to educate your congregation about climate change and the religious response. They need to know why it's important to act before they will be receptive to changing and willing to invest money in the changes. Now, before I go on to the next slide, I just wanted to say this is one of my first green teams when I worked in Iowa. They cut their number of dumpsters in half by starting a church-wide recycling program. And they had those special cups, reusable cups printed with their church. So it was good advertising, and they reduced the use of reusable coffee cups on Sunday. So every little thing you do helps. So I wanted to tell you about one easy way to educate your congregation. IPL is partnering with Bloomberg to offer a free screening of this fantastic new National Geographic documentary called Paris to Pittsburgh. Showing films is an easy and wonderful way to educate your congregation. So we just got this offer in, and so we're just starting to promote it. So I would urge you to consider hosting this in your congregation. We have UCC congregations across the country who are members of Interfaith Power and Light, and some of them are already starting to sign up to host. So I urge you to join them. So from coastal cities to America's heartland, Americans are demanding and developing real solutions in the face of climate change. And as the weather grows more deadly and destructive, they aren't waiting on Washington to act. Learn about these incredible stories in Paris to Pittsburgh and be inspired to create change in your own community. That's their little blurb about the movie. So I'd urge you to take advantage of this fantastic limited time offer to show a free screening of this timely film for your congregation, your organization, your school, university, your community center, your theater. You can show it at home too for your friends and your neighbors and your family. So click here, interfaithpowerandlight.org/films to watch the preview, request the free screening, and download a discussion guide. Hosts will receive the hosting packet, which is a helpful toolkit to plan your event, which includes faith-based questions for discussion and language and images for newsletters and social media posts so that you can get people coming to your screening. And at the screening, ask people to sign up and join your green team. So the next thing about your green team is they should set a goal for reducing energy use and get your congregation behind it. And here's one goal that hundreds of congregations across the United States have set for themselves, and they're on their way to achieving it. It's called the Paris Pledge. Congregations who sign the Paris Pledge are willing to commit to the same carbon reductions that all nations committed to in signing the International Climate Treaty in Paris in 2015. Their goal is to keep the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So they pledge to accelerate and intensify the actions and commitments needed for a sustainable low carbon future. And so signers of Interfaith Power and Light's Paris Pledge strive for a 50% carbon emission reduction by 2030. And they set a goal of being carbon neutral or 100% carbon free by 2050. And you can sign that pledge at parispledge.org. So that's a nice follow-up to showing the film. You can invite people who attend the film to sign the pledge also. So in a few minutes, I'm going to show you congregations that have already actually achieved that goal and others that are working on it. These congregations are using the tools from IPL's Cool Congregations program to reach their goals. So Cool Congregations is an Earth Stewardship program to help congregations and householders reduce their energy use as an act of faith. We ask everyone to make a 10% reduction to start, like a traditional tithe. So it's kind of like a tithe to creation. I started this program with a couple of friends from my former congregation in Iowa in response to a proposed huge coal-fired power plant that was to be built in my neighboring community to power Chicago. Chicago had already exceeded their pollution standards, so they needed to build it elsewhere. And the place they chose to build it was in the African American neighborhood that has the highest asthma rate in the state of Iowa. So the emissions from coal-fired power plants can cause asthma attacks. My neighbor saw the no coal plant sign in my yard, and he said to me, "They're building that plant to meet increased consumer demand. If you really want to do something, you will reduce your use of electricity." Well, his comments caused me to look at my own habits and reduce my own energy use, and then figure out ways to help others do the same. And I learned that energy efficiency is the cheapest, quickest, cleanest way to reduce emissions. In the first year in our home congregation, we had 28 families take part, and together we reduced by 67 tons with an average 10% reduction in energy use and carbon footprint, with an average annual savings of $200 per household. And our team also reduced the energy use of our congregational facility. So your green team will take your congregation through the Cool Congregations process. There's a startup kit at coolcongregations.org. There's one for congregations if you want to reduce the energy use at your congregational facility. And there's one if you want to work with householders to help them reduce at home. So these kits that they have suggestions for organizing, finding ideas, reducing, celebrating, and sharing success. So let me tell you the basic process of Cool Congregations that's covered in the startup kits, and then we'll examine some of those 25 steps to reducing energy. That's our most popular resource from the Cool Congregations program, as you can imagine. So first you need a benchmark. And a benchmark is a snapshot of your energy use. So you have something to compare to later to see how effective your actions have been in reducing energy use. It's really important to have this comparison information to convince your congregation to continue investing in measures to reduce. So there's many ways to get this benchmark or this snapshot. IPL has a calculator for congregations and households on their website. That's the screen you're looking at now. There's one for congregations and households, and it measures energy use, transportation, goods and services, and waste. And we have new calculators coming later this year, but they'll serve the same purpose and measure the same things. So if you are a paid facilities manager at your congregation, or if you have a similar level of education, experience, and interest, then I suggest that you look at the EPA Portfolio Manager tool. That IPL points facilities managers to this tool as well. It's the best one in the industry, and it's free. It's an online energy management and tracking tool that enables you to measure and track the energy and water performance of any building over time. And they have free online trainings on an ongoing basis. So if you want to see what your energy looks like from week to week, month to month, this is the tool for you. The next step that your green team is going to want to do is get an energy audit from your local energy company. Often they are free, and they're required if you want to take advantage of their energy efficiency rebates and incentives. They will likely check the airflow in and out of your building, which explains this bizarre picture that I'm showing you right here. Often they'll bring a thermal imaging camera, which shows the where the cold air is coming in or the hot air is getting out. The colors change. So you see the dark blue at the bottom of that door that shows cold air coming in from outside. So the thermal imaging camera is really a wonderful tool to help you find where to weatherize. So they'll likely do that, check the airflow in and out of your building. They'll check the quality of the insulation and the lighting efficiency of all the lights in your building. And if they don't offer to check the heating and cooling system, your HVAC system, you may need to get a consultant to give you that data. Some utilities will customize incentives for congregations, and some big churches hire an engineering firm to do a more extensive audit. This is also a good investment because if you take any of their recommended actions, you're going to earn that investment back quickly through energy savings. So yeah, so get an energy audit. That's a really important thing to do. And if you've had one done recently, pull it out and look at it. You may not need another one. But you need the information that's on there to help you do the next thing, which is to make a plan. Your green team needs to make a plan to reach your goal. Because greening your congregation, this is a long-term project, and having a work plan will help your green team stick to the plan. So to make a plan, you're going to look at your energy auditor's suggestions. And yes, you can look at IPL's 25 steps to saving energy. Both are steps under $25 and the steps over $25. And look at the success stories on the coolcongregations.org website to see what other congregations around the country have done. And then I want to point you back to the EPA Energy Star for Congregations program one more time. They have a really great workbook for congregations that can give you even more ideas. Now, once you've got your ideas and you think you've circled around on what you might like, the next thing you need to do as part of your plan is to figure the payback for the chosen investments. So an audit by the utility company or an engineering firm will figure those for you. But I suggest that you start small. Start with the measures that give you the greatest energy savings for the smallest investment. And for many, that's lighting, switching to LEDs. That stands for light emitting diodes. Those are highly efficient light bulbs that are better than compact fluorescent because they don't have any mercury and they last much longer. So payback for replacing your incandescents with LED lights is generally under 4 months. And then you have continued savings after that through lower energy bills. And bonus, you get a great story to share with your congregation to convince them to take more measures. I want to share an example with you, which is pretty amazing. The Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Dubuque, Iowa, they won the runner-up award last year in the National Interfaith Power and Light Cool Congregations contest in the energy saving category when they switched to LEDs. These lights are 85% more efficient than regular old incandescent lights, and they last so long that you can leave them to your grandchildren. That's what I've been told by building managers, which saves on maintenance costs because you don't have to hire a lift to change the lights in the sanctuary. The Sisters of Charity Buildings and Grounds Director, Russ Heeman, he told me he got some initial hesitation as he first installed the LED lighting on the campus, but in the end, the incredible savings won everybody over. Their campus occupies buildings totaling 330,000 combined square feet, so it's huge, on their 100-acre campus that sits high on a bluff above the Mississippi River. They currently house 150 sisters, providing independent living, assisted living, memory care, and non-hospital 24-hour nursing care. And they have more than 250 employees. Their free energy audit from the local utility revealed that by far the greatest opportunity to reduce energy consumption was to relamp the entire complex with LED lamps. So the first part of the project was to relamp the Mother House Chapel. Working through a General Electric LED consultant, the 100-watt bulbs were swapped out to 11-watt bulbs, thus reducing the amount of electricity required to light the chapel by 89%. And conservative estimates set the total number of lamps on campus to about 3,000, and now about half of all the lighting is LED. This included replacing the parking lot lights with LED and the major meeting rooms, hallways, etc. And so at 4 months, they've already reached payback, and they're investing in automated light switches, and HVAC or heating and cooling upgrades. And they're planning solar for their new building. So they were able to save quite a bit to put forward towards these other projects. So another important step in the process that your green team will need to do is to measure again and celebrate success. So after you've implemented your plan, you're seeing energy savings, your green team will want to measure your energy use or your carbon footprint again, get another snapshot, and determine your reductions in energy use. So if you live in Iowa, for instance, or a place with 4 seasons, you'll need to give it 13 months after you've first implemented your changes before you measure again to take into account how the energy use varies over the changing seasons. So once you've measured again and determined how much energy you've reduced, you need to celebrate your success with your congregation. That's another way to keep them interested and investing. I'm showing this picture again of the Sisters of Charity because we wrote up a nice blog and put it on our website, the Iowa Interfaith Power and Light website and Facebook page, and got articles in the newspaper about them to help them celebrate their success. So thank you for listening to all of that inspirational talk about big changes you can make. So now let's examine some of the 25 steps to saving energy. Cool Congregations has 2 tip sheets. One has steps that cost under $25 and one has steps that cost over $25. And there's 2 sets, one set for householders and one set for congregational facilities. And you can download them from the IPL website at www.coolcongregations.org. So you should write that down at some point during the presentation. So that's where you can go to download these lists. And this is a picture of the 25 steps under $25. And so if you notice in the upper left-hand corner of this slide, it says go electric, choose 100% renewable energy for your home and switch all appliances to electric. That's the advice coming from many sectors today. And yes, it does mean if you've been cooking with gas, you'll want to switch to electric. I know that's kind of a hard thing for some people, but those new induction ovens and stovetops, they're amazing. They're highly energy efficient, far more than a regular electric appliance. So I wanted to show you how appropriate that recommendation is and how feasible it is, because this is a site in Grand Ridge, Illinois. It has a hybrid solar and wind plus storage facility. The solar collects the energy during the day, the wind collects it at night for a more steady source of energy around the clock. Plus they have storage that they can draw on if they need to. So if you're lucky enough to live in my home state of Iowa, for instance, you're already getting 38% of your electricity from the wind, with more coming online every day. Energy from the wind and the sun is now cheaper than fossil fuels. It's cleaner, safer, and healthier for humans, and it's better for the earth. Don't you just love this win-win-win situation? I do. I get real excited about it. But the first step always, before considering renewables, waste not, want not. Energy efficiency is the cheapest, quickest, cleanest way to save money and energy. First, find ways to reduce your energy use so it'll be cheaper to meet the demand with renewables. So let's move into the 25 steps that you can use in your congregation. And the first one is turn off lights when not needed. And I know that sounds so simple and so ridiculous. And at home, that might be quite easy for you. But in a congregational building, there are so many people using all of the different rooms. It's very hard to make sure that everybody turns off the lights in all the rooms they are using when they are done with them. It can be quite frustrating to institute a behavioral change. But this one could make a big difference. So some congregations put up signage above the light switch plate. We care for creation. Please turn off the lights. Some of them have made light switch covers that say the same thing. We care for creation. Please turn off the lights. I've seen posters on bulletin boards about the same thing. I've seen little notices in church newsletters. I've even seen a congregation that um, got their youth, well, on the younger side, to be most interested. They were like 10, 11, 12-year-olds to be energy stewards. And so every Sunday, one or two of them would go in pairs around the congregation. They were wearing these little sheriff badges that said energy steward on them. And they would go around the congregational building and turn all the lights off before they left. And they were recognized during the announcement period of the worship service as an important contribution to the congregation. So turn off lights when not in use. And this is another really simple one, but you'd be surprised at how many congregations don't do this. Open curtains to let in the light, so you won't need to turn the lights on as much. So it's a very simple one and very useful. And then, of course, upgrade to LED lighting. We already talked about that. Invest as much as you can for the most used lights. It'll pay back in 3 to 4 months in lower energy bills, and then you'll have continued savings after that. And the next one is exit signs. I don't know how many of you still have the old-fashioned incandescent exit signs, and if you do, I would run right out and make this switch. You can get these for $25 or under, and they make a difference because they are on 24/7. So that's a good one to do right away. And if you use holiday lights in your congregation, use the new LED light strings. They come in warm white now. I know the old complaint was the light was too cold. They come in warm white and lots of colors and shapes. I like these old-fashioned C8s. And they use 85% less electricity. So many utilities are encouraging the swap to LED light strings, and they'll take the old light strings from you because they have copper in them that can be recycled. Now let's go to the kitchen. In the kitchen, here's a really easy one. Set your dishwasher on air dry, open the door. Anything that creates heat uses a lot of energy. And if you open the door right as soon as it's done washing, all that steam that rises up takes all that moisture out of the dishwasher. Here's another one. Go poke around in your basement and see if you can find any old refrigerators and freezers that are not used very often. Many times I've been to a congregation where they have been surprised to discover these things in the basement and still running and drawing energy. So unplug and recycle your old refrigerators and freezers that are not used often. And here's another one. Unplug your Bunn coffee maker during the week if it's not used. Anything that creates heat uses a lot of energy. A Bunn operates by keeping a tank of water hot 24/7. So if you're not using it every day, unplug it. And especially make sure that you unplug it. It takes 3 days for the water to evaporate out of that tank if you're not using it, and you could damage the machine. So keep an eye on that. And here's a really simple one. Dry your kitchen towels that you're going to use in your congregational kitchen. When you wash them, drying on a drying rack. If you've got a washing machine in your congregational building that you're using to wash them, just put one of these racks next to it. Those are very inexpensive. Now let's go to the office. In the church office, make sure you set your computers on energy saving mode. You can save as much as 75% if you put your computer in a power saving mode when you won't be using it for an extended period of time. And also enable power management features during shorter periods of inactivity. Or if you can, turn it off at night or days when you know it won't be used. There's another really simple thing you can do that doesn't cost much. Use power strips. You can plug your office equipment in and turn them off to prevent phantom load. That's when a device draws energy in standby mode. 6 to 12% of the nation's electricity goes to keeping things in standby mode. So plug your devices in and turn them off. This particular power strip I'm showing you it's called a smart strip, so that you can leave some things turned on and turn some things off. Now let's look at the heating and cooling. This one I know you've heard about for a long time. Avoid overheating and cooling the building. Set thermostats to 68 in the winter and 78 in the summer. That's a free thing to do. And if you're lucky enough to have programmable thermostats already, program them to these temperatures. Another good thing to do is caulk and weatherize around windows and doors. There's a lot of great how-to videos on the internet. This is something that your green team could do, or put together a team of handy people from your congregation to do. So that shouldn't cost you much at all, but it can provide a lot of savings. You saw that thermal imaging picture of the blue line at the end of that door. Well, you'll be surprised at how much airflow there is in and out of buildings around windows and doors. And of course, replace the filters on the furnace and clean the filters on the air conditioner. These things are vital to keeping the equipment working properly and the air flowing smoothly. Now let's look at water. The water heater should be set, the tank should be set at 120 degrees. You can save about 10% in energy use if you set it to 120 degrees, because the manufacturer default setting is 140. And you only need 120 degrees for dishwashers. That's the required temperature for those. And yes, you can wash your kitchen towels and linens for the church on cold water rather than hot. Again, anything that uses heat takes a lot of energy. And use faucet aerators to cut the use of hot water. I was just reading about how the new 1.0 aerator cuts 50% of the water flow compared to the 2.2 that's often in church faucets. And it doesn't reduce the water pressure either, so it keeps your plumbing healthy. And this one is so insulates with these handy foam things that you just snap on. They're inexpensive and easy to apply and save energy by directing the hot water directly to where you want to use it instead of letting the heat out around the pipes. And here's one on transportation. Encourage your congregants to carpool, take public transit, ride bikes, or walk to worship services. This is another way to reduce the carbon emissions associated with your congregation activity. And check the air pressure in the tires on your congregational vehicle, and also the air filters. This is a way to keep your vehicles running smoothly, and it costs very little. And let's look one more time at the kitchen. Reduce, reuse, recycle. We've been talking about this for more than 30 years. But it's amazing what a difference it can make. Reduce the use of disposables in your kitchen for food service. I know, it means you have to wash them. And you probably have reusable dishes stuck back in the back of your cupboards in your congregational kitchen or in the basement or somewhere. Bring them out again and wash them. It can be a really fun way to socialize. And I'll tell you what a difference it makes a little later when I tell you about this particular church that I'm showing you photos of right now. And also improve your recycling and start a compost pile. If you have a church garden, that compost can add nutrients to the garden. So that was just, oh, here's the recycling and the compost buckets. So that's just a list to get you started thinking. These measures are simple, they cost under $25. And here's a few of the steps from the handout that's over $25. When it's time to replace your appliances, get Energy Star and electric. Insulate your buildings, plant trees to shade your windows in the summer, replace the windows with most energy efficient ones. And if it's time to replace your furnace, go for heat pumps, either air source or ground source, or which is also called geothermal. That can immediately cut your heating and cooling costs by about 30 to 60% with a payback of 5 to 10 years, with of course, greater savings after that, after it's paid off. So I wanted to show you, here's the picture that demonstrates how geothermal works. they extract heat from the air or the ground to or from the building. And so they work for both heating and cooling your building. The indoor parts last about 25 years, and those loops that they put in the ground last more than 50 years. And Bethesda Lutheran in Ames, I'll just give you an example. They were spending $12,000 a year just in maintenance costs for their old gas boiler. And the new gas boiler would have used 1,143 100,000 BTUs, and their new geothermal only uses 227. So they decided to go with a geothermal system. They have reduced demand by 62 kilowatts annually with a cost savings of $12,500 a year. So add that to the former maintenance costs, you're up to $25,000 a year that they're saving, and they're preventing about 98 tons of CO2 a year. And the city was so pleased with their actions, they gave them a rebate of $70,000. And they were able to raise the rest from their congregation. One of the reasons the city gave them that rebate is because it's expected to save the city in future costs about $85,000. So geothermal systems install wells or piping in the ground. And so some congregations have a big lawn and they can do the horizontal pipes, which are less expensive, but other congregations don't have a lot of land, and so they can use the option for vertical drilling, which they can do under parking lots and buildings. And if you do geothermal plus solar, you're carbon free. A lot of people are doing combination these days. I'll show you some of those examples in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that, oops, here we go, that you wrote down the URL at the bottom of this slide. This dsireusa.org is the website that you want to go to look for in state incentives for renewables and energy efficiency. They have loans, grants, rebates, and more. So dsireusa.org. I was just going to show you First Lutheran, which is another church in Iowa. They gathered donations from their congregation to fund their 8-kilowatt array. That supplies about 23% of their needs. And some other congregations in Iowa and around the country have chosen to enter into what's called a power purchase agreement that allows them to have solar without any upfront investment. Power purchase agreements are a way for the solar installer and the congregation desiring array to leverage the tax credits. In this agreement, the installer installs the solar, he owns, operates, or she, and maintains the system for a period of time, during which time the congregation buys the power generated. And then at the end of the term, the congregation typically pays a termination fee to own the equipment outright themselves. So the solar company gets the tax credit and the congregation gets a solar with no upfront investment. So PPAs vary, and they typically end up costing more over the long run than making an outright purchase. Here's a congregation that engaged in a PPA with one of their members who has a solar investment company. His investors put up about $200,000 to purchase about 206 panels. This is what they put on their sign out front. We believe in solar power. It's energy from the sun. There's a lot of opportunities for puns with solar in congregations. And so they are offsetting about 37% of their energy use and saving about $2,000 a year. So they're investing their savings in charitable work. So here's another program that's offered by IPL to help you celebrate your steps that you reach, the milestones that you achieve along your way. It's called the certification program, the Cool Congregation Certification Program. It's free, and you can apply for reductions at 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. You get a paper certificate suitable for framing. And most importantly, you get bragging rights. You're listed on the National IPL website, and you can purchase this lovely eco-friendly bamboo plaque to display in your congregation to remind everyone of their accomplishment. And here's an example of a certified cool congregation with a 20% carbon reduction They made a small investment and it had a significant payback for themselves and a big impact in the community. This is First Universalist Church in Rockland, Maine, where it's really cold. Their studies show that they're losing a lot of heat through the windows of their congregation. And they found these easy to build thermal window inserts that are like an interior storm window. And church members built and installed 26 of these window inserts. And that action combined with adding ceiling fans now saves them 25% in heating costs every winter. So it was really low investment with big payback. And then everybody, all the congregational members wanted them at home. So they did that at home. And then they did low-income families in the area. And then they worked with other communities and other congregations. And they became known as the window dressers. So the window dresser project is now a nonprofit helping to save people money and reduce carbon emissions. So you might look into the window dresser project also. Cross Lake is another congregation that received certification in the gold status because they had several key components that make it a model for their members, the community, for the Presbyterian Church nationwide. It started with constructing the new church itself using sustainable methods, including geothermal heating and cooling, energy efficient windows, doors, lighting, insulation. And in 2013, they added solar panels to provide a considerable portion of the church's electricity needs, and now and they purchased the rest from wind generated units, and now they're putting another installation of solar that will meet all of their electric needs. And so I wanted to show you the Cool Congregations Challenge too. Once your congregation has taken actions that reduce your energy use by about 40%, or you've taken other actions in the community to help others save energy and adapt to climate change, I would ask you to consider applying for the Cool Congregations Challenge. It's an annual national contest to recognize cool congregations that are becoming energy efficient and sustainable role models within their communities. And there's 5 categories with prizes of $1,000 for each category. Energy saver, renewable role model, community inspiration, cool planner, sacred ground stewards. Those are the categories. And so I wanted to show you the winners from 2018 in the energy saving category. That includes lighting, HVAC, windows and doors, insulation. Blessed Sacrament Church in South Charleston, West Virginia, for switching their lighting to LEDs. And the renewable role model, they won. This covers geothermal, solar wind, and solar hot water heating. The Unitarian Universalist Society in Coralville, Iowa, won for building the greenest church in Iowa. They use geothermal, solar for electricity, LEED certified, and since they're all electric, they are net zero, providing all of their own energy. And they also have here's a picture of another part of their congregation. They have passive solar features included as well. And they also have 4 electric car charging stations for their congregants to use, and the neighbors too. And the Cool Planner Award this includes audits and work plans. This went to Liebert Community Ministries in Cuba, New Mexico. Their solar outreach project is designed to bring solar power to the people in their communities where they have several elderly and single parent families living without electricity. That's one of the homes there on the left. So their initial project is to bring solar powered refrigeration to 10 homes and entirely power 3 homes by the end of the year with solar. And they are teaching community members as volunteers to install these solar units. And the last category, sacred grounds. I showed you some of these pictures before. Binkley Baptist Church in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, won for their waste reduction actions. They are now preventing more than 1 ton of waste from entering the landfill every month by using reusable dishes for serving food and by composting. And they also improved their recycling efforts. So their efforts are important to reducing pollution because landfill waste produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas, which is 25 times as powerful as carbon emissions. Oh, I forgot, there's one more category. It's called community inspiration. This includes congregations working within their communities to assist in adapting to or coping with climate change. And it includes congregations inspiring members to reduce their footprint at home. And this congregation, First Parish Unitarian Universalist in Medfield, Massachusetts, won $1,000 for their anti-idling educational campaign to reduce wasted fuel and community health hazards. So the deadline for the challenge is mid-December, and the winners are announced by the end of February of the next year, and there's no fee to enter. So I invite you to sign up for emails from Interfaith Power and Light so that you'll know when the contest is open and the information you need to enter next year. So there's the email, interfaithpowerandlight.org. I mean, there's the website. Go there and sign up for the newsletter. And now I think it's time for me to take questions. So let me just switch over to the questions and see if we can get some of those taken care of. Where are my questions? Aha.
I'll save you, Sarah. So this is Cornerstone Fund. So we have one person who asked, is it worth replacing large water heaters with tankless heaters in our restrooms and kitchen?
Oh, it could be if you're only using water on the weekends. You don't need to keep the water hot all week long. So that could be something that you'd like to look at. Make sure that you're going electric so that when you're able down the road to source your electrons from renewable sources, either through your utility or with your own investment in renewables, you'll be able to have hot water carbon free. But I would urge you with the tankless ones to pencil out the investment because they can be kind of expensive. So make sure you figure the payback on that one before you jump on it. But yes, it makes a lot of sense not to heat hot water all week long if you're only using it on the weekends. Do you want to highlight any other questions for me?
Yeah, so how do you get rid of fluorescent bulbs and ballasts?
Oh, those can be recycled. Home Depot is taking them back for free. And if you can recycle them, it's a good plan because they have mercury in them, which is a neurotoxin, which we don't like to let out in our environment, which is another reason why it's important to switch away from the CFLs as soon as you can afford to, so that we can have less toxic means of lighting our rooms through the LEDs.
So Sarah, do you know if there is any company providing discounts for buying LEDs in bulk?
I don't know any company that, there may be, I don't know of any offhand that does, but when my congregation wanted to switch over to the most energy efficient light bulbs, that was 10 years ago, and that was CFLs. We went to our local big box store. I can't remember if it was Home Depot or Menards now. And we told them what we were up to and that we were going to also do a fundraiser around selling these bulbs so congregants could use them at home. And they were really thrilled that we were making this switch and with the amount of bulbs we wanted to buy, and they gave us a discount. So knowing your local big box store or hardware store, going and talking to them might be a way to arrange something like that.
So we also have another question here of, is it worth it to install motion detectors in your building? And if so, where?
Oh, yes, it's worth it. I mean, in our congregation, we had a really hard time getting people to turn the lights off when they were done with them. And so we did find that it was a good savings for us to invest in those occupancy sensors in the bathroom and in the basement. Those are the two rooms where the lights got left on all the time. So those are the places where we found it was most cost effective to install them. Some congregations I've been to install them in their hallways too, that are not used very often. Some hallways or even some classrooms that aren't used very often. So it's a good way to make sure those lights go off and stay off when no one's in the room.
So one registrant has asked, if our choice is gas or heating oil, which is our best choice?
Well, gas, when you look at the whole picture, it's not better than oil when you consider the impact of fracking on our environment and on human health. You have to frack to get your natural gas. But when it's time to burn the fuel, natural gas is about 30% less carbon producing than oil. So that's probably the direction you're going to go. If you don't have the option to go for electric, then yeah, gas. I mean, lots of people are saying that natural gas is our transition fuel because it creates far fewer carbon emissions than coal and oil. And those gas power plants are easy to put up, quick to turn on, turn off. And so that's our transition to renewables. That's what some people say. Other people say we should be investing right away in renewables and sidestep gas entirely. But yes, gas rather than oil. Go ahead.
So we've time for a few more questions. What do you think of the so-called, quote, compostable, disposable cups and utensils, especially for those congregations in the West where water conservation is so prioritized?
Yeah, a lot of congregations are going to those compostable cups. And for many reasons. One of them is because, yes, you don't have to use water to clean them. And it doesn't take time. If there's no volunteers to help out in the kitchen, it doesn't take time. They're a little more expensive than regulars. Although in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the city takes regular paper plates in their composting bin, actually, but not the cups because they're lined with wax. But yeah, a lot of congregations are going to those compostable service items. And is it better than washing them? I've had that conversation with my family members who live in the West. They choose options that don't require water. So yeah, that probably makes sense.
Do congregations ever go through a self-education process whereby they not only reduce their energy usage, but also learn about the public health impact of their energy, like coal plants, for example? And if so, do you have any good examples you might want to lift up about that?
Oh, well, last year when I was working for Iowa, I created a workshop exactly about that and took it around to congregations all around the state. So if you have an IPL in your state, you can look on the Interfaith Power and Light.org website and it'll list all of the different IPLs. Most of them have education about the impacts of climate change on human health. And they'll tell you all about the different ways that we create these carbon emissions that cause climate change, and also look at the impacts on communities of color and low-income communities in particular who are suffering the worst from climate change. So I think that's where I'd look first to find a speaker to come to your congregation to talk about that topic.
Someone has asked that when we go back to the conversation about motion detectors, that there are some individuals that worry about just simply, let's be real, that they don't have enough time in the bathroom. And so are there real ways to have adjustable motion detectors so that we make people feel comfortable that they won't be in the bathroom in the dark?
I've had that happen to me. That is really uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if there are timers on motion detectors. That is a really good point. I will look into that one because there's nothing more ridiculous than having to wave your arms in the air like that. So I'll look into that. Thank you for asking that question.
And a couple more questions. What ideas beyond light bulbs do you have for historical buildings that are just not able to make many changes?
Oh, well, the weatherization and insulation are great measures to take to reduce energy use. And also, do you have some storms over your stained glass windows? Is that allowed for an historical building? I'm not sure. But the weatherization and the insulation, that stuff doesn't show. So if it's on the National Historic Register, I would think those things would be great options to pursue.
All right, and the last question we have here is about solar rates and about demand meters, and just how do they make sure that once they put solar panels in, that their rates are not also going to go up based on the different energy companies?
Yeah, I think you have to look into exactly what that energy company is doing. What is their plan? And what is the state doing? I know my home state of Iowa is considering legislation right now that is going to make it a lot more costly to put up solar. So look at what your state legislation is doing. Look at what your laws are in your state for what's allowed. And also, yes, connect directly with your local utility company if that's who you're hooked up with your solar, and find out what their rules and regulations are. It's different everywhere. So sorry, I can't answer
And
more specifically, but
that's okay. And before we get to our last question, I wanted to share some of the attendees have circled back to the motion sensor question and the real issue of bathroom time. And there does seem to be various adjustments of either minutes or even CO2 detectors that would allow for adjustments to make that a very comfortable time for folks in the bathroom.
oh, that's great. I'm so glad somebody answered that question. I'm reading the answer right now. That's wonderful.
And the last question here before we leave today is, how about landscaping changes, switching to succulents or replacing grass lawns with low water plants? And if so, do you know of any programs or grant programs that the churches could look into to do that?
Well, I know that my home congregation swapped out a lot of their lawn for native prairie, which doesn't need watering. I know other congregations have gotten funding from their cities because they included in their new landscaping plan, they included water catchment systems. That's probably the trick to getting funding for landscaping changes, is to see what your municipality or your local utility has for incentives for water catchment, because that's a big deal now, catching the stormwater before it goes into the street, catching it on your property before it goes into the street. One congregation that we worked with in Des Moines, Iowa, downtown St. Paul's Cathedral, did a lot of water catchment on their property and got a grant from the State Conservation Organization in addition to money from the municipality. Um, so if you include that in your new landscaping plan, I think you might have some luck finding funding. Um, yeah.
So on behalf of the United Church of Christ Cornerstone Fund, we'd like to thank you very much, Sarah.